Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar. How do you identify a Linux user? Don't worry, they'll tell you, okay? You could be at a funeral and a Linux user will come up in the most inopportune time, be like, he wouldn't have died in the car accident had he been using Arch Linux, for crying out loud. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is Wubuntu, Linux with Windows. And of course, it says Wubuntu, also known as Windows Ubuntu, is an operating system that reproduces all the appearance and functionality of Microsoft Windows. Now, if you're looking at these screenshots, whoa, that looks very dangerously close to Windows 11. I mean, one would say, if you squint your eyes a little bit, you did the squint test, it pretty much is Windows, for crying out loud. Now, what's interesting is this is a Linux distribution that, per the GPL agreement, has not revealed its source code where I can find it readily available. And also, they're selling a key for like $35. Which is a pretty big no-no. Now, again, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how these people haven't actually been looked at by Microsoft. This is like basically spreading your cheeks for a lawsuit, okay? Like, this is literally getting up and just going, yo, Microsoft, right here, right between the cheeks, baby. That's just pretty much how this works, okay? So, obviously, crass display aside, let's get into Wubuntu. Now, this is the real Ubuntu over here, which is ubuntu.com. Now, obviously, Linux, for people who don't know, comes in various different shapes and sizes. At the end of the day, this is an operating system, and an operating system is basically the underlying software you use to run your video games, your applications, so on and so forth. So, if you're watching this video on your gaming computer right now, you're probably using Windows, right? You're using Windows 10, Windows 11, God forbid. Maybe you're old school and you might be using Windows XP or something, right? That could be a thing. Now, if you don't really game and you just want to, browse something in the coffee shop, you're on your Mac OS system, okay? You're just chilling, vibing, having a good time. Now, if you're somebody that is part of less than, around 1% of the market share, maybe you're playing on your Steam Deck, maybe you're like somebody like me, a little bit of a masochist, you're on Linux. So there are three massive operating systems, Linux plus, well, what is it? Linux plus GNU. All right, let me be like very, very matter of fact here. Okay, it pisses off a lot of Redditors. And then you've got Windows, you've got Mac OS. So three massive operating systems. Now, Linux is by far used everywhere in servers. Okay, but for desktop computers, not a whole lot of people use it. I wish more people did, and maybe that'll change as time goes on, but for now, Windows is about the most de facto system you can use. So what has happened is this little organization has come by and made Linux, but with a Windows look and feel. So obviously, for somebody that wants to maybe switch around, try Linux, and they're like, oh shit, this stuff is too confusing. I mean, I've seen the memes. Installing a web browser makes it, you have to be hacker man to do so. Not necessarily the case, but this kind of stuff probably appeals to somebody who's like, I want to try Linux, but maybe I want to, have it look like something that I know, which is Windows. A lot of people use it. It's entrenched. It's going to be here forever. But of course, if you look inside the situation, it says this has all the functionality, including the new AI Copilot, Microsoft Edge, OneDrive, PowerShell, Teams, and everything. And it does not require TPM Secure Boot or any of the hardware requirements that Windows 11 has. And that's actually true. Windows 11 has actual requirements that can leave some computers pretty obsolete. So if you're somebody with an older computer or you don't have certain things, then this might actually be the only way you can kind of use Windows 11-like on your system. So of course you can download a free edition, and it's got a video file too. And of course, what it says is compatible with Windows applications. It has all the Microsoft ecosystem, and it's safe and very fast. Wubuntu is fast, secure, very secure. No more worries about viruses and crashes. Which is not true. If anybody tells you my computer doesn't get a virus, they're lying to you, okay? And this is not necessarily very secure. There's actually a really shady part about this, one that I'll get into just a little bit. Let me just read through the rest. You've got KDE Plasma, and it's high optimized, not highly, just high optimized, okay? Meaning that, you got your bong right here, you've got your computer, it's optimized, ready to go. You've got Windows 11 Cinnamon, which is ultra optimized, so if you have an even weaker system, you can run a simpler user interface. And then, of course, the features that it gives you, it looks literally like Windows. If you look at that, that's the Windows control panel. These are Windows dialogues. I mean, it's got OneDrive, it's got even Android support. It's got, crazy things built into it. So this sounds like a pretty cool thing to go buy. And of course, it's got like a little forum page you can get into. And if you start here, there's actually like people talking about the situation. Now, where it gets into a bit of shadiness is how many people have downloaded this? 48,000 people downloaded Wubuntu in this week? And it's only got 6 reviews? Man, I mean, I ain't gonna say that's botted, but that sounds botted as fuck, homie. God damn. Anyways, I actually installed it. The installation is about as simple as you can expect. It doesn't install like Windows. It's actually far simpler. It's like the Manjaro installer. You click next a few times, enter your username, you let it automatically partition it, bam, you're ready to go. So here I've got Wubuntu, not on my native system. I got it running in a virtual machine. Ain't no fucking way we're running this thing on an actual hard machine, and we'll get to why exactly in a bit. Let's look through this actual system. So I installed Wubuntu, I got it all set to go, and if you're looking at it right now, boys and girls, this looks like dangerously close to Windows. It's insane. Like the wallpaper, not even that. I mean, the wallpaper is a wallpaper. Anybody can do that. But the actual like Windows button, the user interface, I mean, this is by far like about as great as it gets. I mean, it's got like the perfect theming and everything. You've got like chat applications. I mean, let's open up the file manager. You've got Microsoft Teams basically loading up, and unfortunately, it's just a little bit slow because of the emulation. I'm not giving it a whole bunch of assists, and I'll get to exactly why in a bit too. So this is the actual like settings screen, and you can actually change it to different like it is by far as close to like the actual like Windows 11 operating system one can expect. Did the actual settings screen crash? Jesus Christ. Okay, so here in like the modifications, it's got like all the Windows 11 wallpapers just ripped and distributed basically for free and in the paid version as part of this tool, which I'm pretty sure is not actually legal. And of course, obviously, it's got something known as Linux FX, which is interesting, and we'll get to why. Remember this name right over here. And obviously, that's basically the system in of itself right here. And it is just ungodly slow. Like, it keeps firing up Microsoft Teams, which I don't need. I don't want that. I'm not asking for it, obviously. And of course, like, if we just, it's like it's ungodly slow for some reason. But of course, when you open up some of the actual system settings, the actual like UIs at some point resemble KDE Plasma, which is the actual like display manager that I use underneath Linux anyway. So the cracks only go so far. Yeah, like this is like a specially like branded version of the system settings right over here, which obviously it reflects the actual like they kind of have it matching as close to the control panel. But obviously, if you click on any of these things, instead of actually going to a different page in this specific section, it opens up a corresponding like settings tab in the KDE manager. So again, it only goes so far. It's something known as Power Toys, which I guess is like a UI thing they've designed to make it match as close to Windows as possible. So of course, over here in the settings, I mean, this is like, if you showed this to somebody random, they'd probably think, yeah, goddamn, this is like Windows 11, but it's not. It's just Linux. When you neo-fetch, which they built in, it's Windows Ubuntu. Like, it literally has Windows and everything attached to it. It's like, it's so weirdly faithful, it's not even funny. Now, of course, you can see that it's running on the 5.15 Linux kernel, and obviously it uses the app system, so it is pretty much just Ubuntu in of itself, obviously with the flavor of Wubuntu applied on top of it. Now, the problem with an operating system like this is ultimately it leads to bad understanding of Linux. Linux is a different operating system than Windows. What somebody's going to do is they're going to open up something like, if they want to download, say, the Brave browser, right? They're going to go to Brave download. They're going to go to download for free over here, get Brave. And of course, it's going to lead to Linux. So somebody may not understand how this stuff necessarily works. But again, to show you an idea, what they've done with this actual operating system is they have bundled something known as Wine within it, which is the compatibility layer that allows you to run Windows exe files. So to give you guys like that rough idea, I've got a few installs like exe files. And again, To show you, because it comes bundled with Wine, all you have to do is click the exe file and it builds the directory first and it starts Wine. So again, you have to only do this like once for an installer, and most Windows applications generally work underneath this. Now, obviously, if you're using something like Premiere Pro or like some massive software, that probably won't fly by real well, but obviously in a general sense, it'll work relatively well. And obviously you can fire up things like Steam as well too. So give it a minute just so it downloads and prepares this. Look at that. It's actually installing like the Windows version. And of course, like you can install like the Windows version of like Steam right over here, finish that, and it's actually going to launch the Windows version of Steam. Now, of course, you wouldn't want to do this because you're underneath Linux. You want the Linux version of Steam so you can install things like Proton that allow you to play those big Linux games on your actual system. This is not going to work as good as you think. And obviously, for somebody who downloads this and they think maybe I can get like that Windows gaming computer, but Linux all for free, this is not the way to do it. Again, obviously, I know you guys watching this are smarter than the average Andy, but this is for somebody that looks at this and thinks it might actually be good. If there's like an influencer that makes a video on this and passes it off as it's good and real and totally kosher, that's never going to be okay. Now, as all of that is installing, the other feature that this basically gave was Copilot, which is not the same like AI tool that is in Windows 11. I mean, it is, but what they've done is basically they've made it like a little web page that you open up and you can basically play around with Microsoft's Copilot AI. So instead of it like basically sliding in from the right, it just opens up a little web page that you can access Copilot and mess around with things on. Now, obviously, all of these things are tiny little boons that you've been given just to like make this look like Windows. But at the end of the day, it is just a Linux system. So obviously, you know, you've got the browsers installed, and if we open up Brave browser on PC or the Windows version of it, it works pretty much fine underneath Linux anyways. Now, you might be like, Muda, could I actually game on this? You absolutely can game on this if you wanted to. Literally, it's possible to game underneath this. It's just another version of Linux. It's like, much like Arch, much like Manjaro, all you need is Steam, Wine, the necessary applications, and you can run like games underneath this. Now, at the end of the day, is this worth trusting? That's a story we need to now dive into. Now, earlier in this, when we were looking through its wallpapers, I told you to remember the name LinuxFX. Now, at this moment in time, there was a write-up done by a website known as kernel.eu, which actually talked about something known as LinuxFX. So dumping the customers, a Windows-like distro, including the spyware and activation. LinuxFS is a Brazilian software company run by skids, or script kiddies. Their primary product is an operating system called LinuxFX, which is a Microsoft Windows 11 clone that also clones the spyware and activation features. The company claims over 1 million users worldwide and over 15,000 downloads this week. So like I showed you, the Wubuntu had 45,000 downloads in a week, but like 6 reviews. Makes no sense. Absolutely bought it. So of course what they did was they actually started looking through the database within it, and they had found out that basically they downloaded the FX boot, and then they launched and they monitored for MySQL connections using these terminal commands. And after opening the LinuxFX activation client, they had an activation for their professional $35 key, they get the following output. And then, of course, they had dumped what had actually happened over here, the database, and they had found out that the machine table contains the metadata for all installations that have phoned home for the first time. It contains the IP address. There's only over 20,000 entries in this file, a far cry from the 1 million number. So obviously, the question here is, if a company like this is lying about very basic metrics like that, then what are they also lying about in this situation that we don't know of? And obviously, if you go to the LinuxFX page, which is still available, they've got a professional key, by the way, also for $35, one that I would not buy. You shouldn't be buying Linux distributions like this. They don't even give up any of the actual source code appropriated with it. It's just a Windows clone that they've made to just capitalize on people that want that on their computer. That, you know, let's say somebody that wants Windows 11 and they don't have the computer for it or something. They have made this like version of Windows, this Windows lookalike that might fool the average Andy. But trust me, I have no idea how they've gotten by without actually touching a lawsuit. What's even funnier is when you go into like the Wubuntu like discussion over here, it's got 89 topics. So it is like actually pretty active. Like there are people talking as of this week. So interestingly, when somebody known as Victor Escobar asked them about their relationship with Linux FX, listen to this right here. What is the project's relationship? If any, it seems like they cloned your website. Wubuntu is a Linux FS-based operating system that contains all the themes and looks similar to Windows 10. Sorry, 11 if you use Plasma. Is it a rebrand or a whole new project? No. Wubuntu uses Windows theme. Linux FS uses the Red Sand theme. Dumbass. Wubuntu is based on Linux FS, but it uses another theme. Both is same developers. Now, to understand, this could be kind of harmless, maybe, but the fact that they have lied about very basic things makes me not want to trust them. Look, at the end of the day, the thing with Linux is like there's so many different flavors of it, and there's a lot of good actors and bad actors out there. If you're going to use this because you think it adds simplicity, then you might want to try using something else, something more reputable in the Linux landscape. There's stuff like Linux Mint, Ubuntu, Manjaro, Arch, so on and so forth. I personally use Arch, I have to mention that. And using the most reputable sources, yes, it's not Windows, but Linux isn't Windows. It's going to take some time for you to learn it. Using something like this because you think that it's easy could lead you to A, having a bad experience in general, and it also could lead you to having some of your information be stolen. Now, when I talk about legality, there was projects like Lindows, which obviously you can imagine Microsoft got pretty angry at somebody just basically aping what would be their trademark, or rather their branding in a way too. In a situation where people were willing to sell copies of this operating system at times for about $79.99. For instance, Linspire 7 was available for that amount. There was also free versions like FreeSpire, for instance, too. But again, this was a situation where back in 2001, you can read this all you want, San Diego, California, Lindows Incorporated was here. So obviously, because of the fact that it was most likely a US entity versus this Brazilian group, Microsoft is unable to chase it, because I highly doubt that Microsoft wouldn't really jump into it. But again, the idea over here is that they used the Wine API, which basically allowed them to use a Linux-based operating system, and through the Wine API, you could actually run Windows applications underneath Linux. And again, you can do this for free yourself. You literally do not need to rely on, these paid-for type operating systems. It also sucks when these projects also just end up selling, what is supposed to be free software in a way as part of this like proprietary package. So it also draws more ire from companies like Microsoft, if anything. So of course, you can even read in 2002, Microsoft obviously sued them for the name Lindows. And of course, while Microsoft's claims were rejected by the court, which asserted that Microsoft had used the term Windows to describe graphical user interfaces before the Windows product was ever released, Microsoft sought a retrial. This was postponed in 2004. And again, a settlement basically had come out in this entire situation. And so what had happened was Microsoft paid $20 million, but they got the Lindows trademark to Microsoft. And that's why the name was later changed to Linspire. So it almost feels like kind of a win for the people that are making this in the first place. But again, this is, if you ever find this interesting, there are things like React OS, which aren't even Linux based at all. That is a full reverse engineering. I mean, you can literally fire it up for yourself right now. It is reminiscent of like early like Windows 2000. And this is more fun to play around with, because while it's not super duper functional, if you want to be like a, open source, like Windows open source gamer, it is great if you want to like sort of play around with a version of Windows that is a reverse engineering without any code base or any touching from Microsoft itself. This is a far more interesting project. This, or something like Temple OS even. These Windows lookalike operating systems do nothing but actually raise more confusion, and in my opinion, they end up leading to a bad experience, which prevents people from even switching over to Linux in the first place. I can't trust what's in this code because they're not even willing to share it publicly with the average person, which is a really, really terrible sign right there. And the fact that they're charging for this professional key, and if you look at what they add, the features include Windows-style control panel and setting, the Active Directory, Access OneDrive, support for the Android system. So using this tool called Power Toys, they're basically making you pay for like a paid version, which again, is not something that you should be doing to. $35 and giving money to this PayPal is not something you necessarily want to be getting into. It seems like these people have found like a grift that could reasonably be successful, but ultimately still is a grift. Ladies and gentlemen, Wubuntu, in my opinion, is unsafe, and I would never ever trust it. As would most reputable tech channels also say the same on this matter. It's fun to look through this kind of stuff because it's goofy, but at the end of the day, there's a pretty serious tone to it. If you're gonna use Linux, just download Linux Mint, okay? It literally is even easier to get running than this. And hey, you can game and do whatever you want underneath that just as fine. If you really care about Windows 11 and the look and feel, just fucking download Windows 11, okay? All right, it's like the people that download like a Mac skin onto their... Just use Mac, okay? At that point, just use it, all right? Stop trying to transition the operating system into something that it isn't. Just use it as it was intended by the actual development team. God damn. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Wubuntu gets a fat 1 out of 10 from me. And given some of the actual analysis on this from other people, it's not something that anybody should be trusting. That said, if you enjoyed today's video, let me know in the comment section below. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. And I'll leave you with some of this beautiful React OS footage. Maybe one day we'll toy around with this.